Apparently, discovering your husband's second relationship at Denver International Airport falls somewhere between mild inconvenience and cosmic joke on life's disaster scale. There I was, surrounded by the chaos of Terminal B, watching Nathan, my husband of 15 years, holding hands with a woman who looked like she'd walked straight out of a Pottery Barn catalog. When our eyes met across the terminal, his face performed the fastest transformation since those before and after weight loss commercials. Welcome to what I now call the Thursday that ruined everything. I'm Sylvie Harlow, digital marketing manager extraordinaire, professional career sacrificer, and now, apparently, unwitting participant in my own marriage's demolition derby. The blonde woman, because of course she was blonde, didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. Instead, she turned to Nathan with a perfectly plucked eyebrow raised and said, loud enough for the pretzel vendor to hear, "She still doesn't know anything? Let me paint you the full picture of this Hallmark movie gone horribly wrong." I'd decided to surprise Nathan at the airport after his critical business trip to Chicago. He'd been having so many of those lately, each one requiring longer stays, later calls, and more distant behavior when he returned. The same business trips that had cost me 3 promotions because someone needed to hold down the fort in our Cherry Hills Village suburbia dream house, nestled in the exclusive Charlotte neighborhood where the HOA fees alone could fund a small country. "Honey, what are you doing here?" Nathan stammered, dropping the woman's hand like it had suddenly burst into flames. The woman, meanwhile, stood there examining her diamond ring, a rock so large it could cause its own gravitational pull, while looking at me with what I can only describe as competitive pity. "I thought I'd surprise you," I replied, maintaining the placid smile of a PTA mom who just found out the bake sale fundraiser has been extended another week. But clearly I'm the one getting the surprise party here. This is Vanessa," Nathan offered weakly, as if her name explained why they were holding hands or why she was wearing what appeared to be an engagement ring that could double as brass knuckles in a pinch. "Fiancé," Vanessa clarified with the smug satisfaction of someone who just found a designer purse at 80% off. Going on 8 months now, Nathan said he was finalizing his divorce this trip. The pretzel vendor suddenly found his salt shaker absolutely fascinating. "Divorce?" I echoed, my voice maintaining the eerie calm that precedes natural disasters. That's funny because typically people inform their spouses before filing for divorce, unless the legal system has changed drastically since I last checked. Nathan's face cycled through more colors than a malfunctioning RGB gaming keyboard. "Sylvie, I can explain." "Can you, though?" I interrupted, still smiling like I was posing for our next Christmas card. "Can you explain why I've been managing our household solo while you've been building a second life? Or why I turned down the Seattle position that would have doubled my salary because you said moving would destabilize our marriage?" Vanessa's perfectly contoured face started to crack as realization dawned. "Wait, you two are still together? Actually, together?" She turned to Nathan with the look of someone who just discovered their organic, free-range chicken was actually frozen nuggets. "You told me you separated last year." "He did separate," I offered helpfully. His brain from reality, apparently. The airport security guard nearby was pretending not to watch us while clearly recording mental notes for his dinner party story later. "Ladies, please, let's not do this here," Nathan pleaded, his voice dropping to a whisper as he noticed the growing audience of delayed passengers finding us more entertaining than their phone screens. "You're right," I agreed, unexpectedly. "This isn't the place." I turned to Vanessa. "How long have you known Nathan?" "Almost 2 years," she replied, twisting her engagement ring nervously. "He was consulting for my father's company." 2 years, I repeated, doing the math in my head. So all those nights he was working late on the Henderson account. "My father is Richard Henderson," Vanessa supplied, her expression shifting from smugness to something approaching horror. "Of course he is," I laughed, not the fun kind of laugh, but the kind that makes people slowly back away. "Well, I think you two deserve each other. You're both excellent liars." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Nathan? Don't bother coming home. I've suddenly decided to redecorate, starting with removing all traces of garbage from the house." As I walked away with all the dignity I could muster, I heard Vanessa demand, You said your wife knew and was okay with it. You said she didn't want to be married anymore. I didn't stick around for his response. The Uber ride home was a blur of notifications as Nathan called repeatedly. I blocked his number somewhere around the High Line Canal Trail exit. I also took the opportunity to snap a few photos of the airport scene on my phone before leaving, including a perfectly framed shot of Nathan's panicked face next to Vanessa's bling-adorned hand. Digital evidence might come in handy. By the time I reached my driveway in the most coveted section of Charlotte, I'd formulated a 3-phase plan that would make military strategists weep with admiration. You see, Nathan made 3 critical mistakes. First, he married a woman who specialized in digital strategy. Second, he was too lazy to manage his own online accounts. And third, perhaps most fatal, he underestimated just how vindictive a woman scorned could be, especially one who controlled all his passwords. While he was still probably explaining himself to Vanessa, or maybe already booking a hotel room, who knows, I logged into our joint bank account. Nathan123. Seriously, that was his password for everything. The man having an affair couldn't even be bothered to use incognito mode on our shared laptop. I transferred exactly half of our savings to my personal account, leaving him the other half because I'm nothing if not fair in my fury. Next, I accessed his work email. As his unofficial personal assistant for 15 years, I still had all his login information. His big presentation to the board next Tuesday? I made some subtle adjustments. Nothing obvious, just enough incorrect figures to make the CFO raise eyebrows, and one hidden slide programmed to appear if he clicked in a specific sequence. Our last Christmas photo with the caption, "Family Nathan hides from girlfriend while asking for a raise to buy another ring." For my final act of digital vengeance, I logged into our shared Instagram account. Nathan had always been intensely private about social media. Now I understood why. I posted a carefully curated album of our happiest moments with the caption, "Celebrating 15 wonderful years with the man I just caught holding hands with his secret fiancé at Denver International Airport. It's our Thursday, surprise, our 2 timing. Tuesday, marriage was a scam." I tagged his mother, Judith, a woman so religiously conservative she once told me wearing open-toed shoes to church was asking for attention. Then I called a locksmith. When Nathan finally returned 3 days later, he found new locks, half the furniture gone, and a poster on the front door with the photo I'd sneakily taken at the airport captioned, "Wanted, man who thinks he can maintain 2 households on a salary that barely supports one." The cherry on top? The anonymous tip to his company's financial compliance department about certain expenses charged to his corporate card, weekend getaways, jewelry purchases, and dinners that certainly weren't business-related. If Nathan wanted 2 separate lives, I decided both of them should collapse simultaneously. This was definitely not in his 5-year plan. The fallout from what I now call Terminal Betrayal was nuclear. My phone blew up faster than a microwave with aluminum foil. Nathan's mother, Judith, called first, not to check if I was okay, but to inform me that airing family laundry is unladylike, and this is why we always had concerns. 15 years of bringing her gluten-free pies at Thanksgiving, and I was still the outsider who corrupted her perfect son. "Judith," I said with the saccharine sweetness of an artificial sweetener packet, "I'm so glad you called. Did Nathan ever mention Vanessa during your weekly Sunday calls? You know, the woman he's been seeing for 2 years while still married to me?" The silence lasted so long I checked if the call had dropped. Then came a sharp intake of breath that could have sucked the paint off walls. "Nathan would never. Check his Instagram tags, Judith. I'm sure your prayer circle at Cherry Hills Community Church will have plenty to discuss this week." I hung up as she was mid-scripture quote. Next came Nathan's sister Meredith, who had the audacity to suggest I must have driven him to it by focusing too much on work. This from a woman whose idea of career advancement was getting promoted from customer to distributor in her essential oil pyramid scheme. "You're right, Meredith," I agreed. "I worked so hard at my job and maintaining our home that poor Nathan had no choice but to start another family. If only I'd spent more time rubbing lavender on his temples and less time paying our mortgage." The calls continued. Our neighbors, the Prestons, who'd had us over for barbecues in their backyard with the perfectly manicured lawn that would make the Glenmore Country Club envious. Melissa Preston's tone dripped with faux concern. "We're here if you need anything, but Dave always said something seemed off about you two." Translation: they'd known something was wrong but never bothered to mention it. Suburban solidarity at its finest. "How fascinating," I replied. "And here I thought the only thing off was Dave's pudding game and your obvious Botox addiction. My mistake." While I was fielding these delightful interactions, Nathan was experiencing his own special brand of chaos. His company's HR department had placed him on administrative leave, pending an investigation into financial irregularities. Turns out using your corporate card to wine and dine your secret fiancé counts as fraud. Who knew? I learned this when he showed up at the house on Monday morning, looking like he'd been sleeping in his car, which, honestly, he might have been. The morning fog still hung over the Charlotte neighborhood as he pulled into the driveway, his BMW's pristine shine now dulled by what appeared to be several nights of parking under trees. "You've destroyed everything," he said through the screen door, since his key no longer worked. "My job, my reputation, my relationship with Vanessa. Fascinating how you list Vanessa as a separate loss from our marriage," I observed, leaning against the doorframe. "Tell me, do you keep your moral compass in the same drawer as your wedding ring when you take it off for your business trips? Sylvie, please." He lowered his voice to that special pleading tone reserved for men who've been caught. "This has gotten out of hand. Can we just talk about this like adults?" "Adult conversations require adult behavior," I replied. "Like not creating a second life behind your spouse's back. But sure, I'll be adult enough for both of us. You have exactly 3 minutes." He ran his hands through his hair, which looked like it hadn't seen shampoo since the airport incident. "My company is freezing my accounts during the investigation. I need access to our joint savings to get a lawyer." I laughed so hard my neighbor's dog started barking in solidarity. "Our joint savings? You mean the account I transferred my half out of? That joint savings? You had no right." "I had every right. And the bank agreed when I showed them our marriage certificate and explained the situation." Funny how sympathetic bank managers can be to women whose husbands have secret fiancés. The vein in his forehead throbbed like it was trying to escape the situation before he could. "Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? Have you tried asking Vanessa? Oh, wait. Is she not returning your calls either? Something about being told you were divorced when you weren't?" His silence confirmed my suspicion. Vanessa Henderson, daughter of Richard Henderson, who was not only Nathan's client but also a major investor in his company, had apparently been less than thrilled about discovering she was the other woman. According to LinkedIn updates I'd been monitoring, she'd returned to her father's company as VP of Operations, a position Nathan had been angling for. "Richard has pulled all his business," Nathan admitted, looking defeated, "and filed a complaint with the board." "Sounds like a personal problem," I replied, channeling the tone of every unhelpful customer service representative I'd ever encountered. Just then, my phone pinged with an email notification. I glanced down to see a message from my boss at Apex Digital Marketing. Your promotion request." "Well, this has been illuminating, but I have actual work to do," I said, starting to close the door. The kind that doesn't involve defrauding companies or people." "Wait." He jammed his foot in the door like we were in some bad rom-com. Except there would be no reconciliation in the third act. "I need clothes, my laptop. My life is in there." "Your life walked out of Terminal B 3 days ago," I corrected him. "But fine, I'll put some essentials in a box for you. Check back in an hour." I shut the door before he could respond and immediately opened my boss's email. 2 months ago, I'd applied for the senior director position, a role that would require relocation to Seattle. Nathan had been adamantly against it, citing our roots in Denver and his established client relationships. Now those reasons carried all the weight of a paper airplane in a hurricane. The email was brief. "Circumstances have changed. Position still open if you're interested. Need to know by Friday." Circumstances had indeed changed, including the contents of Nathan's essentials box, which I filled with his most unflattering sweater, the one his mother gave him that made him look like an overstuffed sausage, socks with holes, underwear that had seen better days during the Obama administration, and his second-best razor. I added his laptop, after making sure to log out of all accounts and reset them to factory settings, of course. His precious golf clubs remained hostage in the garage. If he wanted those, he'd need to negotiate with actual lawyers present. When he returned, I handed him the box without ceremony. Your essentials? As promised. He peered inside, his expression souring. This is it? Where are my golf clubs? My good suits? Probably in the same alternate dimension as your integrity, I suggested. Check there. As he turned to leave, defeated and clutching his sad box of mediocre belongings, my neighbor Diane from across the street just happened to be walking her dog along the Highline Canal path that borders our property. Diane, who had always been suspiciously interested in Nathan, slowed to witness his walk of shame. Having some troubles? She called out, not even pretending she wasn't eavesdropping. Before Nathan could answer, I stepped onto the porch. Nathan's just downsizing his life to match the size of his character. Very minimalist approach. Tiny house. Tiny morals. Diane's laugh echoed down the street as Nathan hustled to his car, the box awkwardly balanced in his arms. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion and started browsing Seattle real estate listings while updating my resume. The promotion would mean a 40% salary increase, more than enough to start fresh in a city where no one knew me as poor Sylvie whose husband left her. The Seattle rain would wash away the Denver dust, and frankly, I was ready for the cleaning. By Wednesday morning, my Seattle job offer was officially accepted. My Cherry Hills Village house was listed with a realtor who practically salivated at the commission on a Charlevoix neighborhood property, and I'd begun the liberating process of digital divorce. Separating your life from someone else's is like untangling Christmas lights after a decade in storage. Tedious, frustrating, and occasionally shocking. I was knee-deep in changing passwords when a notification popped up on my laptop. An email from Vanessa Henderson, subject line, "We should talk." Now, conventional wisdom says never engage with the other woman. Conventional wisdom never met a digital marketing strategist with access to corporate servers and a vindictive streak wider than the Highline Canal Trail. Dear Sylvie, her email began with corporate formality. I believe we've both been victims of Nathan's deception. I'd like to meet to compare notes. Purely professional. Lunch tomorrow at Barolo Grill? Professional, indeed. The Barolo Grill was where Denver's elite networked over $200 bottles of wine at noon on weekdays. If Vanessa wanted to play power lunch, I could certainly dress the part. I replied with equal formality. Vanessa, I accept your invitation. Though I must warn you, I've found comparing notes on Nathan to be a deeply disappointing experience. See you at 12:30. What Vanessa didn't know, what Nathan himself had apparently forgotten, was that I had access to more than just our household accounts. 3 years ago, when Nathan's assistant had quit suddenly, I'd helped him organize his digital files, including his personal cloud storage that contained every client contract, proposal, and private communication. That night, I dove deep. Not out of jealousy. That emotion had burned out like a cheap candle. But strategic preparation. Know thy enemy, or in this case, know thy husband's secret fiancé who might actually be an ally. What I discovered made me laugh so hard I scared my neighbor's cat off my porch. Nathan hadn't just been building a second life. He'd been systematically scamming the Henderson Company while dating the boss's daughter. Classic corporate fraud dressed up as creative accounting. No wonder he'd been so desperate to access his laptop. The next day, I arrived at Barolo Grill 15 minutes early, dressed in my power suit, the one Nathan had once called too aggressive for dinner parties. I'd selected a corner table with my back to the wall, like a mafia boss in a movie. Vanessa arrived precisely on time, her diamond downgraded to something more tasteful, her blonde hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into her seat with the practiced grace of someone raised in country clubs. "I imagine this isn't easy." "On the contrary," I replied, sipping my water. "I find Betrayal quite energizing. Clears the mind wonderfully." Her perfectly maintained smile flickered. "I want you to know I had no idea you and Nathan were still together. He told me you were separated, finalizing divorce. that you'd moved on emotionally years ago. And you believed him because he showed me divorce papers, she said, pulling out her phone and sliding it across the table. These divorce papers. I looked down at a document bearing my forged signature, dated 18 months ago. The papers looked legitimate enough to fool someone who wanted to believe them. Well, that's a Class 5 felony in Colorado, I remarked, as casually as commenting on the weather. Vanessa nodded. That's what my father's lawyer said. Nathan's facing potential charges for fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of company funds. I leaned back, studying her. Not the devastated fiancé I'd expected, but a calculating businesswoman. You're not here to compare notes on our mutual heartbreak, are you? No, she admitted, straightening her silverware with manicured precision. I'm here because my father wants to pursue criminal charges, but that would create a PR nightmare for our company. Investors get nervous when fraud makes headlines. And where do I fit into this damage control strategy? We need to know what you plan to do. If you go public with everything, you mean more public than my Instagram post that's already been shared 5,000 times? I interrupted. She winced. That post has been problematic, but contained. A lawsuit would be another level of exposure. I took a moment to appreciate the irony. Nathan had created this mess, yet here were two women strategizing how to clean it up. What exactly are you proposing, Vanessa? A coordinated response. My father's company handles the financial fraud internally. You handle the personal side however you see fit. But without litigation, that would trigger public records. I stirred my water with its lemon slice, watching the ice cubes circle. And what do I get from this arrangement? Financial compensation for your discretion. And my father's personal guarantee that Nathan will never work in this industry again. I laughed, not the polite social laugh, but the genuine kind that comes from deep appreciation of life's absurdity. You know what's fascinating? Nathan thought he was so clever playing both of us. Now here we are, deciding his fate over lunch. The server arrived to take our orders. I selected the most expensive entree on the menu, while Vanessa chose a salad that cost roughly the same as a small appliance. After the server left, I leaned forward. Before I agree to anything, I need to show you something. I opened my tablet and pulled up the documents I'd discovered. Your father might be interested in these, particularly the transfers Nathan was making from the project funds to his personal offshore account. Vanessa's composure slipped for the first time. How did you get these? Let's just say Nathan was careless with his personal cloud storage, the same way he was careless with his marriage. She studied the documents, her expression hardening with each swipe. This is worse than we thought. He wasn't just double-dipping on expenses. He was systematically draining project reserves. To the tune of approximately $1.2 million over the past 2 years, I confirmed. Coincidentally around the time you two started dating. Vanessa set down the tablet, her lunch apparently forgotten. I need to call my father. Before you do, I said, holding up a hand. Let's discuss my terms. Her eyebrow raised. You're negotiating? I prefer to think of it as ensuring mutual benefit, I replied. I want 3 things. First, a letter of recommendation from your father to my new employer in Seattle, leveraging his considerable industry influence. She nodded slowly. Doable. Second, Henderson Industries makes a substantial donation to Women's Financial Independence Network. It's a nonprofit that helps women rebuild after financial abuse. My father sits on 3 nonprofit boards. I'm sure he can arrange something appropriate. And third, I said, taking a deliberate sip of water, I want to be the one to tell Nathan that both of his carefully constructed lives are collapsing simultaneously. Vanessa's perfectly lined lips curved into a smile that wouldn't have looked out of place on a shark. That, she said, raising her water glass, would be my pleasure to arrange. We clinked glasses in what might be the most unexpected alliance of my life. The following day, Nathan received 2 separate communications. A formal letter from Henderson Industries detailing the termination of all contracts and the initiation of an internal financial investigation. And a text message from me, the Westin downtown, 3 p.m., presidential suite, come alone. I'd booked the suite using Nathan's credit card, the last charge before I canceled it. Petty? Perhaps? Satisfying? Absolutely. As I prepared for our meeting, arranging the documents in precise order on the suite's elegant dining table, I felt something I hadn't experienced since seeing them at the airport. Power. Not the destructive kind that Nathan had wielded, but something cleaner. The power of having nothing left to lose. I checked my watch. 2 hours until showtime. I picked up my phone to confirm our special guest was still planning to attend. After all, what's a good takedown without witnesses? The presidential suite at the Westin looked like it had been decorated by someone who thought luxury meant gold plate everything that doesn't move. Perfect for what I had planned. A setting so ostentatious it would make what was about to happen even more satisfying. At precisely 2:45 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Vanessa, dressed in corporate battle armor. A tailored black suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage on the Charlotte property. "Is everything ready?" she asked, surveying the suite with the critical eye of someone who'd grown up attending charity galas in similar spaces. "Absolutely," I confirmed, gesturing to the dining table where I'd arranged 3 leather portfolios. "Yours is the blue one. Mine is red. Nathan's," I smiled, "is the black one, like his soul." She nodded approvingly. "My father sent his regards, and this." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a signed letter of recommendation from Richard Henderson to my new employer in Seattle, along with confirmation of a $250,000 donation to the Women's Financial Independence Network. "Your father works quickly," I observed. "Henderson men are efficient," she replied, then added with perfect deadpan, "except apparently when vetting potential sons-in-law." That startled a genuine laugh out of me. In another universe, we might have been friends. "There's champagne in the minibar. I thought we might need refreshments for the show." "I like how you think," Vanessa approved, heading to retrieve the bottle. At 2:58 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from the hotel front desk. "Mr. Harlow has arrived and is on his way up. Places everyone," I announced to my audience of one. "The guest of honor approaches." Vanessa took position in the bedroom, door slightly ajar, while I sat at the dining table, casually reviewing documents like a CEO about to fire an underperforming employee. At exactly 3 p.m., Nathan knocked. Always punctual for important meetings, his one redeeming quality. I opened the door to find him looking almost unrecognizable. The polished corporate consultant had been replaced by someone who appeared to have been sleeping in his car and using dry shampoo as a lifestyle choice. His usual confidence had deflated like a week-old birthday balloon. "Sylvie," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Thank you for meeting me. I know things have been complicated," I offered, stepping aside to let him enter. "Is that the word we're using for you created a second life and committed multiple felonies?" He flinched but entered the suite, eyes widening at the luxurious surroundings. "How did you afford this?" "I didn't," I smiled sweetly. "You did. Consider it your last contribution to my mental health." His attention landed on the dining table with its 3 portfolios. "What's all this?" "Please, sit." I gestured to the chair in front of the black portfolio. "We have a lot to discuss." Nathan sat cautiously, like a man expecting the chair to be electrified. "Listen, Sylvie. Before we start, I want to say I'm sorry. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but—" "Open the portfolio, Nathan," I interrupted, my tone leaving no room for his practiced apology speech. He hesitated, then complied. Inside were printouts of all the financial records I'd discovered. The systematic draining of Henderson Industries project funds, the offshore account transfers, his expense reports claiming reimbursement for client meetings that were actually dates with Vanessa. The blood drained from his face so rapidly I was momentarily concerned he might faint. That would have ruined the choreography of my revenge, and I'd put far too much effort into planning this moment. "How did you get these?" he whispered, flipping through the pages with trembling hands. "You really should have changed your cloud storage password," I replied, examining my nails, "especially after having me organize all your digital files 3 years ago. Remember when I helped you create that secure folder structure? Turns out it wasn't so secure after all." He looked up, panic replacing shock. "Sylvie, you don't understand. The Henderson account was complex. These transfers were legitimate project expenses. For what project exactly? I interrupted. Project Build a Secret Life? Project Defraud the Company? Or my personal favorite, Project Marry the Boss's Daughter While Still Married? It's not what it looks like, he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. It never is with you, Nathan. But unfortunately for your narrative, I've brought someone who might have a different perspective. I turned toward the bedroom. You can come out now. The bedroom door opened fully, and Vanessa emerged like a shark sensing blood in the water. Nathan's face performed an Olympic-worthy gymnastics routine, cycling through confusion, horror, and panic in record time. Vanessa? He stammered. What are you doing here? Comparing notes with your wife, she replied coolly, taking the seat beside me. Turns out we have a lot in common. We both trusted you, and we both got screwed. Financially speaking, of course. Nathan looked between us, the dawning realization that he was facing a united front, causing him to physically shrink in his chair. This is some kind of setup. No, Nathan, I corrected. This is consequences. Something you've apparently managed to avoid for quite some time. Vanessa opened her blue portfolio and removed a document, sliding it across the table. This is from my father's legal team. Henderson Industries is conducting a full internal investigation into the $1. $2 million missing from project accounts under your supervision. And this, I added, pulling a similar document from my red portfolio, is from the mortgage company. Apparently, taking out a second mortgage on our house without my knowledge or consent constitutes fraud. They were very interested to learn about that. Nathan grabbed both documents, his eyes darting back and forth between them. You can't do this. We're married. You'll be implicated too. About that. I smiled, producing another document. These are our actual divorce papers, filed yesterday. Unlike the forgery you showed Vanessa, these are legitimate. My lawyer assures me that filing for divorce due to newly discovered criminal activity provides me with certain legal protections. And these, Vanessa added, removing a final set of papers from her portfolio, are from the Denver DA's office. They're very interested in the forgery of divorce documents, which, as you may not know, is a Class 5 felony in Colorado. Nathan's face had moved beyond pale to a concerning grayish hue. This will ruin me. My career, my reputation, everything I've built, everything you've stolen. I corrected gently. There's a difference. He turned to Vanessa, desperation in his eyes. Your father wouldn't really press charges. Think of the publicity, the scandal. Daddy has already informed the board, Vanessa replied with the calm certainty of someone who'd grown up with wealth and power. They're announcing your termination and the financial investigation on Monday. Your company email and access credentials have already been deactivated. And the mortgage company has frozen all assets connected to our home, I added. So that money you were hoping to access, gone. Nathan's shoulders slumped in defeat, the full weight of his actions finally crashing down on him. What do you want from me? Money? I don't have any left. That's the beautiful part, I said, sitting back with the satisfaction of a chess player announcing checkmate. We don't want anything from you. Not anymore. Vanessa checked her watch and stood. I should go. I have a dinner with the board to prepare for. She turned to me with something close to respect. Sylvie, it's been illuminating. Good luck in Seattle. As she left, Nathan watched her go with the broken expression of a man seeing his carefully constructed house of cards collapse in slow motion. Seattle? He asked finally, turning back to me. Oh yes, I confirmed, gathering my documents. I took that job you insisted I turn down. Senior director position, 40% salary increase, relocation package. I start in 2 weeks. So that's it? You're just leaving? After destroying my life? I leaned forward, meeting his eyes directly. Nathan, you destroyed your own life. I'm just making sure you don't get to keep the matches. 6 months later, I was sitting in my corner office overlooking Seattle's Elliott Bay, watching ferries glide across the water like giant floating Lego pieces. My new life had taken shape with surprising ease, as if Denver and Nathan had been weights I didn't realize I was carrying until I set them down. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Henderson Industries consultant pleads guilty to fraud charges. I smiled to myself. Some closure arrives in unexpected packages. I opened the article to discover Nathan had accepted a plea deal. 3 years in a minimum security facility plus restitution. The photograph showed him entering the courthouse looking like a discount version of his former self. His designer suits replaced with something off the rack. His confident swagger reduced to a defeated shuffle. How the mediocre have fallen, I murmured to the empty office, taking a satisfied sip of my Seattle coffee, which, true to reputation, was exponentially better than Denver's. My assistant knocked lightly on the door. "Your 2 o'clock is here, Ms. Harlow." "Send her in," I replied, closing the article. The door opened to reveal Vanessa Henderson, looking every bit the corporate heiress in a designer suit that probably cost more than my first car. Her blonde hair was now cut into a sleek bob that screamed, "Take me seriously or regret it." "Seattle suits you," she observed, taking the seat opposite my desk. "VP of Digital Strategy within 6 months? Impressive. What can I say? Turns out career advancement is much easier when you're not compromising for someone else's comfort." I gestured to the view. "How's Denver?" "Cold," she replied with a smirk. "Daddy made me COO last month. Turns out having your almost husband defraud the company is quite the career accelerator." I laughed. Our unlikely alliance had evolved into something resembling friendship, if friendship was built on mutual vengeance and occasional business collaboration. "I saw the news about Nathan," she continued, her expression sobering slightly. 3 years seems light for what he did." "Justice isn't always about time served," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "Sometimes it's about the complete dismantling of everything someone valued. His reputation, career, freedom, social standing, all gone. For a man like Nathan, that's a life sentence, regardless of when he leaves prison." "Philosophical as always," Vanessa noted with an approving nod. "How's the house hunting going?" "Closed on a place in Queen Anne last week. Waterfront view, space for a home office, and not a single memory of Nathan lurking in any corner. Perfect." She reached into her designer bag and withdrew a small gift box. "Housewarming present. Nothing extravagant, just appropriate." I opened it to find a keychain with a miniature gold gavel charm. Engraved on one side were the words, "Justice served." "You always did have a flair for the dramatic," I observed, but attached it to my keys nonetheless. "Speaking of dramatic," Vanessa continued, "have you heard from any of the Denver crowd? Nathan's family? Those neighbors of yours?" I smiled, remembering the last correspondence I'd received from that chapter of my life. Judith, Nathan's mother, sent me a letter. Handwritten, if you can believe it. Told me I was going to hell for not standing by her son during his time of tribulation. I sent her a fruit basket with a note saying I'd save her a seat. Vanessa's laugh echoed around my office. "And those insufferable neighbors? The Prestons? Last I heard, they were using my scandalous divorce as their dinner party entertainment at Glenmore Country Club. Little do they know they're featured in the memoir I'm writing. Working title, How to Lose a Husband and Find Your Backbone." I'd read that. Vanessa approved. We moved to the sitting area where my assistant had arranged coffee and those ridiculously expensive French pastries that somehow taste better, because they're impossible to pronounce correctly. "You know," I said, selecting a pain au chocolat, "a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting in a Seattle office, running a department, and having coffee with the woman my husband tried to marry behind my back, I'd have questioned their sanity." "Life has a twisted sense of humor," Vanessa agreed, stirring her coffee with precise movements. "I used to think the worst thing that could happen was public embarrassment. Turns out, it was the best thing. Forced me to stop being my father's ornamental daughter and start being his actual business partner." I raised my coffee cup. "To Nathan, then. The human dumpster fire who accidentally launched 2 successful women into better lives. May he enjoy his prison commissary selections as much as he enjoyed his corporate expense account," Vanessa added, clinking her cup against mine. As Vanessa left to catch her flight back to Denver, I returned to my desk and opened my calendar. Tomorrow marked exactly 1 year since that fateful day in Terminal B of Denver International Airport. 1 year since my life had imploded and then reconstructed itself into something stronger, more authentic, and undeniably more satisfying. I pulled up the email I'd been drafting to my team, finalizing plans for our new digital campaign. At the bottom, I'd added a personal note, a little wisdom I'd gained through fire. Sometimes the most devastating moments in our lives are actually doorways to something better. The trick is to walk through with your head high, your wit sharp, and your investment portfolio diversified. I hit send and turned back to the window, watching the Seattle skyline as afternoon light painted the glass buildings in shades of gold and amber. Nathan had wanted 2 lives. Ironically, he'd given me a brand new one, better than anything I could have imagined for myself. Turns out, revenge isn't just a dish best served cold. Sometimes it's the entire feast.